Fred, we're now joined by Christian Whiton, principal at DC International Advisory. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. I know it's pretty late for you, but do you think that the differences between the different political parties, the regions, are insurmountable? Is it a farce to believe that we can find a unity government?
I think so at this point. I think Maliki is tenuous, and there may be the wherewithal within Baghdad to push him out for another leader. But the notion that you can have some sort of rapprochement between the three main sects in Iraq, the Kurds, the Shiites, the Sunnis, I think it's just beyond that at this point. It's very clear that the West, whether it's the U.S. or some combination of other powers, is not going to put the cork back in the bottle, is not going to reinforce or to enforce what was the status quo before this terrorist insurgency in Iraq. So what you're left with is an Iraq that's coming apart into three pieces and a U.S. strategy that's dependent on three groups getting together, and it just doesn't seem like there are the fundamentals of that. And we just saw that, of course, in today's walkout.
So why do you say that the West really has no reason to get involved or won't be able to get a grip on the situation? Is it primarily because oil prices have retreated from 9-month highs? I mean, what would trigger an involvement, a firm involvement and commitment by the West, especially the U.S.?
I don't think anything would at this point, just because President Obama has said repeatedly that he was elected to end wars. Now, the fact is our enemies get a vote in that, too. And frankly, if you look at where this insurgency came from, it came not so much internally in Iraq, but from across the border in Syria. In Western neglect of the Syrian civil war, which has involved a lot of diplomacy, but not a lot of real support for more moderate rebel groups there, has allowed that situation to metastasize, to flow over the border. So, as far as the military means to defeat a relatively poorly equipped insurgent army, well, of course, the West possesses that. As far as the political will to go back in, essentially to reinvade Iraq, really all sides in Washington have made it abundantly clear that's not on the table. And if you look at other factors that were involved in the coalition of 2003 and beyond, Great Britain, etc., they're all not getting in. So it's more of a political will question.
Christian, is a three-state solution inevitable then? And if that does materialize, is there a risk that it could plunge Iraq into yet more years of inter-ethnic strife?
I think that's probably the likely outcome at this point. If you look up north, the Kurds are really inching quite close to independence, are expected to take de facto independence fairly soon. Turkey in previous years would have been adamantly opposed, but it actually has gotten to a point where it's been fairly comfortable with that now. And Kurdish oil making its way through Turkey in trucks heretofore, and more recently through the Turkish port of Ceyhan, making it onto tankers and being sold. So really economic engagement there. And, really who is going to stop this newly emerging Sunni state run by ISIS, the terrorist group? The U.S. isn't going to. It seems like Saudi may try and influence the trajectory of that state, but isn't going to push it out of Iraq. So who's left? The Iranians? Well, the Iranians certainly are on the side of Baghdad, the side of the Shiites, on the side of Maliki, but probably aren't going to be able to throw enough force in to really get rid of ISIS. So I think you are, in fact, left with three Iraqs, but it's going to be met. There's going to be a lot of violence, and frankly, I think the markets continue over the long term to understate political risks to the price of oil.
Can I just pick up on that? Because the sense that I'm getting now is that ISIS and the Sunni militants don't have the military capability as of now to really advance into the Shiite heartlands in the south and threaten the oil flows there. Is that right, or is it just a matter of time before they attain that capability?
I think it's right, but that's not their strategy. I think, they've probably reached a point of natural exhaustion where they're going to consolidate, especially in Sunni majority areas, to take on Baghdad, which has actually become more ethnically Shiite since the 2003 war. I don't think is in their plan, but they can put Baghdad into crisis. They have insurgents there, so you can see a lot more suicide bombers, a lot more IEDs, other bombs, and chaos. Likewise, the southern part of Iraq, which is where most of the oil is produced and exported, exported is mostly Shiite. And I don't think you're going to see ISIS move there quickly, but the ability to cause problems there, to blow up pipelines, to cause disruptions. And will that be offset by the increase in Kurdish oil? I think the answer is no in the near term. So not a ISIS consolidation of the whole country, or even necessarily an ISIS conquest of the capital of Baghdad, but just the ability to put Iraq into prolonged crisis. Also, Saudi Arabia will jump in. They are not going to stand by idly while Iran bombs Sunnis, even if it is ISIS-run Sunni Iraq. You're going to see, in effect, a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, I'm afraid.
Christian, we have to leave it there, sir. Thank you very much indeed for your input today. Christian